I was brushing my teeth when I heard it hat sharp, solid thunk of wood meeting wood, echoing in the still morning air like a starter pistol for chaos. I thought maybe someone was fixing a fence or putting up a birdhouse, but then I looked out my bathroom window and saw three folks in business blazers hammering a wooden stake into the edge of my pond. One of them, a woman in heels, was humming like she was enjoying a day at the spa. Another held a clipboard and looked way too comfortable writing on private land. And then the third one, the boldest of them all, planted a sign that read in glossy blue letters, Willowbend Reflection Pool. Community property. My toothbrush hit the floor. My name's Elias Graves, and I bought this land fair and square with the kind of savings that only comes from working long hours, skipping vacations, and driving the same beat-up truck for 15 years. I'd been living on this property just 6 months, and already it had become my sanctuary. Nestled at the edge of a neighborhood that operated under one of those notorious homeowners associations, my little corner of the world wasn't just peaceful, it was off-grid, no strings attached. Or so I thought. The pond had no name. It wasn't marked on any official community map. It was spring-fed, natural, and older than the HOA charter itself, if I had to guess. There were turtles, migrating ducks, and even a heron that would land on the edge like it had stock in the place. The real estate agent called it a hidden gem, but to me, it was peace. That kind of deep, still peace you can only find when you sit under a cedar tree and just listen. So when that sign went up, and when that lady Karen, though she hadn't told me her name yet, but you just knew, started walking the perimeter of my pond like she was planning a garden party, I stepped out in pajama pants and boots and asked, "Ma'am, what exactly are y'all doing?" She looked over at me like I was the one trespassing. "Oh, hello, Mr. Graves, is it? We're just reclaiming the community serenity space. This pond, well, it's technically within our greenbelt easement. It's going to be reclassified as a reflection pool." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "And what now?" "Reflection pool," she said with a smile so wide it looked like it hurt. "For peace, wellness, and aesthetic cohesion. You'll be receiving landscaping guidelines soon." Now, there are moments in a man's life when you realize your quiet is about to end. That was mine. I didn't yell, didn't curse. I just turned back into the house, pulled out my property survey, laminated it, and taped it to the inside of my window right next to a wildlife ordinance from the county that made it crystal clear this land was private and that pond was mine. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. The next morning, I found high school volunteers hammering in the same sign again. When I asked them politely to leave, they told me they were just doing what the HOA asked. So I pulled the sign up myself, took a picture, and emailed it to the HOA board with a short note. "This is trespassing. Please stop." 2 days later, fairy lights appeared around the pond, solar-powered, twinkling in the trees like some enchanted wedding venue. And there she was again, Karen, standing across the water with a camera crew, filming herself for what I assume was a community update or maybe her TikTok. I didn't react, didn't argue, but inside, something snapped. That night, I poured myself a glass of iced tea, sat down with a legal pad, and wrote 3 words at the top. Operation Frogstorm begins. You see, I'm not just some guy who likes the outdoors. I'm a retired wildlife biologist. I spent years studying amphibians, documenting their habitats, even helped draft parts of the regional conservation guidelines. So if they wanted to turn my pond into a spectacle, then fine. I'd turn it into the loudest, wildest, most biologically aggressive swamp they'd ever seen. First, I contacted a local conservatory and arranged to adopt several native frog species, ethically sourced, of course. Bullfrogs, peepers, even a few chorus frogs. I adjusted the pond's pH, added logs and pads, and fine-tuned the lighting to simulate peak mating season. Then came the floodlights. 4 industrial-grade solar-powered floodlights, positioned on adjustable mounts, disguised in decorative landscaping rock. I aimed them so the light would reflect off the pond in ways that were, well, let's just say the neighbors probably thought aliens were landing. Within a week, the nighttime croaking was so intense that someone started a neighborhood Facebook group just to complain about it. The posts were hilarious. Why does it sound like a motorcycle gang is holding karaoke in the woods? My personal favorite was, is there a frog rave happening every night? Or am I losing my mind? Karen, to no one's surprise, was not amused. She called me furious, accusing me of disturbing the peace and weaponizing frogs. I calmly reminded her that my land was protected, the frogs were native, and nature doesn't obey HOA bylaws. The next escalation was truly something. Karen, in all her suburban brilliance, started blasting classical opera from her balcony every night. Full volume. It sounded like Mozart being eaten by a lawnmower. I responded by shifting my frog sound loops to begin at 4:45 a.m. Directional speakers. Low, rich, throaty bullfrog calls. Impossible to track. Unstoppable. Then came the flags. One morning, I woke to find little orange survey flags lining my backyard, a proposed meditation path, according to city planning. Karen had filed a permit claiming the pond was a community feature. I brought in my lawyer, slapped a cease and desist order on her desk, and presented aerial photos from the last 30 years showing the pond had never been part of any communal use. But I didn't stop there. I filed for an ecological designation with the stadia process I knew well, and within 3 weeks, thanks to my old colleague Dr. Marion from the university, the pond was officially listed as a protected habitat. Karen lost her mind. She tried to retaliate legally, accused me of creating mosquito hazards and wildlife dangers. I posted signs, put up mosquito-repelling plants, installed safety railings and motion cameras. But then, she went too far. One morning, I walked down to the pond and found the frogs floating. Lifeless. Dozens of them. The smell hit me before I even reached the edge. Bleach. Someone had poisoned the water. I checked the footage. There she was. Karen, hoodie up, white jug in hand. 2:41 a.m. Crouched by the water, spraying bleach like some eco-terrorist. I called the cops. They took samples, confirmed the poison. Karen was arrested. No cuffs, but the sight of her being escorted down her perfectly manicured driveway while neighbors filmed was unforgettable. The footage went viral. A local journalist picked it up. The headlines were ruthless. HOA president poisons protected pond. Karen versus the croak. Within a week, the HOA held a vote and removed her. Unanimously. But I wasn't done. I sued for damages, emotional distress, ecological harm. She tried to plead mental exhaustion, but the footage and the frogs did all the talking. What came next surprised even me. The new HOA president, a soft-spoken woman named Loretta, invited me for coffee. She apologized, said they wanted to partner on a community environmental education program, said maybe it was time to learn instead of control. We formed the Willow Bend Eco Reserve Initiative. I ran the science side. They stayed in their lane. Kids came to visit the pond. Teachers brought field trips. I gave weekend talks about frogs, ecosystems, and the dangers of arrogance. Karen moved, sold her house at a loss. Rumor has it she tried joining another HOA but got rejected. Guess, frog poisoner, is hard to explain in a background check. Months later, we installed a bronze plaque next to the pond. It read, Elias Refuge in honor of those who stand for nature and never back down. And below that, when they tried to silence the frogs, they only made them louder. So yeah, I guess the moral is this. Never underestimate a quiet man with a pond full of frogs and a laminated copy of the law. And if you ever find yourself at war with someone who thinks they own the world because they sit on a board, well, maybe it's time you start croaking back. Leave a comment down below if you've ever faced an HOA nightmare, or maybe you've got your own frog story. I read them all. And trust meth frogs are listening too.